It's alright.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Yo guys, what is up? Max from Borderlands 3 video, and today is all about damage. Now, the biggest complaint that I've seen over my year of making videos on Borderlands 3, and the biggest frustration that I've seen from you guys is, hey, I tried this build from this video looked cool, the build looked really strong, I tried it and I can't do as much damage as you. I saw you do that one shot, I have the exact same build as you and I can't one shot. Today is basically a look behind the curtain and a discussion and information guide on how to do the most absolute possible damage on Moze. This isn't a build video. We're basically going to be talking about all the tips and tricks and little things that you can do to one-shot every enemy in the game. Now, I do plan on doing this for the other characters depending on how well this video is received. So if you guys do like this video, be sure to drop a like and comment, and if you really like it, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We're gonna start the video off by looking at two different scenarios, and these two different scenarios, I'm wearing the exact same gear, nothing has changed, and one is a one-shot damage cap and one is nowhere near it. And that's gonna see if you can notice what I did wrong in the clip that I didn't one shot, and then we'll talk about how to one shot basically everything on Moze and her mechanics. So let's get right into it.
No refund.
All right, guys, so let's talk about what just happened and break it down. Now, if you already know what ruined my damage, that's awesome. We have a lot of things to talk about. If you didn't, let's talk about it right now. So I was using the same gear on both setups. I was using a 390 bloom. Not saying that this is like the most damage. Like, honestly, like a lot of this gear I shouldn't be using. Like, I shouldn't be using an old god, honestly. I should have been using a amp shield, but I was using the old god, I was using the flare, a snowdrift victory rush, and a cloning mining tracker. And what ruined my damage there, because I did the exact same thing both times, was the timing of my shot with my grenade. My grenade damaged kilovolt on the first one, the mistake before my shot went off, and that ruined all of my damage. All of my setup was absolutely blown because my grenade touched kilovolt before I got to shoot. And that isn't ruining my 390 annoyance, because my grenade honestly doesn't do that much damage. It's a level 57 CMT. What ruined it is that it took away my short fuse proc. Now, I have made a lot of build videos on Moze. I've talked about short fuse. You guys know how strong this skill is. And this isn't a short fuse video. This is talking about some of the inner workings of short fuse. And what you should know, if you didn't, is that short fuse is guaranteed to proc on your first shot from spawning in. Now, it also procs off of your second shot. And it needs to be your first instance of damage to guarantee it. Now, your 9th shot is also guaranteed, and short fuse runs in a string. I'll have this string on screen if you like really want to look at it, but you can know when your short fuse is going to proc. This string is different for some of the other predetermined skills, but knowing these strings is very helpful to doing the most damage, such on Flak. Knowing when you're going to proc Two Fang is a big one on Flak, and you can abuse these things to do the most damage, and is something that I don't think the average player base knows about. So we're trying to make sure that our short fuse procs when we boot into the game, because 390 with short fuse is going to carry us. Short fuse double dips into all of our damage or splash damage. It's going to take our gun damage. It gets mayhem scaling. 390 is going to boost that. It's non-elemental damage guaranteed. Short fuse is just so strong. Now, what can really hurt you doing these kills is doing damage before, and any damage will break your short fuse. If I snowdrifted into kilovolt right before shooting him, I lose short fuse. If my grenade touches kilovolt right before shooting him, I lose short fuse. If I'm using Iron Cub or Iron Bear and I don't have a melee fist augment equipped, if my Iron Bear or my Iron Cub has a weapon and they shoot at kilovolt or whatever boss you're trying to one-shot, that'll break short fuse and you won't get it. So you're trying to basically, as Moze, for this guy, because we're talking about Moze, you're basically trying to tiptoe around whatever enemy you're trying to kill first so that no damage happens to them. Your Iron Bear doesn't do damage, like a Snowdrift, Slam, anything doesn't damage them until you get your first shot off on. All right, so now that you guys understand short fuse and how not to lose it, let's talk about what else you should be using to supplement that damage. And the first thing, and probably the most important thing with that, is your class mod choice. Now, Moze is very lucky to have a ton of very powerful class mods, and you really can't go wrong, but we're talking about what can do the absolute most damage. At the end of the day, damage cap is damage cap. You're still going to be one-shotting things, but it does matter a little bit for having the most damage. So I took all of these class mods, what I would be considered to be the strongest class mods in the game, the Rocketeer, or strongest class mods for Moze, the Rocketeer, the Blastmaster, the Minesweeper, and the Flare, which I think are the 4 most powerful class mods, and went over to Sponge Boss, who has the most health of any enemy in the game, and went to see what did the most damage or what could one-shot on a non-crit. And from my testing, which I'll reveal, I was very surprised by the results. Rocketeer is very strong, but it didn't do the most damage. Blastmaster takes 50 seconds to charge up. 50 seconds, so it's not ideal, but it still didn't do the most damage. Minesweeper, I'm honestly going to leave out, while Minesweeper also didn't do the most damage. Minesweeper has the potential to do the most damage out of these class mods based off of grenade chaining. However, most things, 1, aren't going to live long enough for your grenade to chain, and 2, it's RNG based, and I want to be able to one-shot things by just shooting them once every single time. I don't want to have to rely on RNG, and the winner here was actually the Flare. The Flare is going to give you the most damage, and the reason the Flare is going to give you the most damage is because this gain up to 100% damage while Iron Bear is active, decreases as Iron Bear spends fuel, is a multiplicative increase to all of your damage sources. Think about taking all of your damage and then multiplying it by 100%. It is crazy the amount of damage you can get with the Flare, and there's a few downsides to it, and we'll talk about that in a second, but with these other class mods, for example, like the Rocketeer, you can hop out of Iron Bear, you get Big Surplus, which is a ton of damage because your action skill is going to be cooling down. You get points into fire in the Skagden, hopefully on your class mod. You're going to get your ASEs on your shield, and I didn't think that could possibly compete with the Flare, because the Flare, you're not going to get your ASEs, you're not going to get Big Surplus, because you can't get Big Surplus and Flare at the same time. One's cooldown, one's while active, so you miss out a ton of things, but the damage is still there, this strong enough. Now, when I took the Flare to Sponge Boss and I threw my grenades so that I got my on 25, I was using a amp shield for the Flare because I think that's the best option for the Flare. Using the amp shield with the Flare, and I used this 390 ion cannon. My actual Skagden damage wasn't as high as using something like the Rocketeer, but I damage capped Sponge Boss on a non-crit damage capped with short fuse, and because Flare is going to be giving that multiplicative damage increase to short fuse on top of already V2 390, and that damage is insane. Now, when I took over the Rocketeer, we did with the same ion cannon and a Rocketeer, and I know my rolls aren't exactly the same here. I wish my class ones were exactly the same, but they all have basically 36 splash damage, which weapon fire rate, max health, action skill damage, sniper rifle damage isn't really going to be impacting me here. But the Rocketeer did like 200 million on the short fuse and a ton of damage with the Skagden. Nothing to like scoff at. It's still like over 400 million damage, and it's still one shot, but it wasn't the same amount of damage because it didn't hit damage cap. And then I took the Blastmaster, my best rolled of all of them. The Blastmaster still did a ton of damage. We got our biggest short fuse proc, which makes sense because short fuse double dips into Blastmaster's splash damage increase. Still one shot, but did not hit over damage cap. That, and from a bunch of other testing, is why I think that the Flare is the best class mod you can use for damage. Its one shots are super consistent. All you have to do is call out Iron Cub. Now, there is one thing that I'll say about the Flare, and that is that there is a glitch with it right now, where when you call it out, I don't know exactly why this happens, but it basically, if you look down, you can see that it doesn't start at full capacity, and that actually impacts your damage. It only starts at about 75% of that multiplicative damage increase, where it should, you would have hoped it would have been 100% if you're using skills like in the purple tree, like deadlines, or sorry, in the blue tree, like deadlines and things to give you your fuel back. You can get it up to that 100% multiplicative damage increase, but just for one-shotting, you're not going to have that. However, that 75 multiplicative damage increase is enough to allow us to one-shot everything and basically guarantee a damage cap short fuse, which is why I think for one-shotting, it's the best. For consistent mobbing, you could definitely argue that Minesweeper would be the most. Rocketeer is extremely consistent, extremely powerful, and Blastmaster, as long as you're not reloading, are really good. Flare for like mobbing requires a lot of setup so that your Iron Cub stays active and can be a pain in the butt to manage. However, that multiplicative damage increase, because it's not going to suffer any diminishing returns, is absolutely gross, and definitely something that you should be using along with your one-shots. Now, the next thing that you should be using along with your one-shots is a amp shield. Now, the anoint on it genuinely doesn't matter because you're not using ASCs, but a amp shield, the amp damage percentage is calculated in with the trigger damage of the short fuse. So basically, amp damage, very good. Hit a crit with the amp damage, 390 flare, and anything that you shoot at will be dead. The weapon you use doesn't really matter that much. I would say something with a higher base damage and a single shot is going to be much better. If you did not know, things with multiple pellets, such as, like, for example, a Sandhawk, only one of these pellets is going to get 390. 390 is calculated on impact, or on instance of hitting an enemy. So if I was to shoot Iron Cub here and all of my pellets hit, only the pellets that would be hitting the enemy and keeping them above that 90% threshold would be doing the 390 damage, and all of the other pellets, even if they're in the same shot, if they're instanced to have the enemy below that 90% threshold, they will not get 390. So using single pellet weapons such as like the beacon, the bloom is kind of just the meme weapon I've been using, the ion cannon, the plasma coil with 390 is insane. Definitely should check out, if you haven't already, using a plasma coil with 390 on Moze. It's very strong. And yeah, guys, that's kind of it for the video. I hope you guys learned something new. In summary, amp shield, 390 single projectile weapon, the flare. The actual artifact that you use doesn't really matter, to be honest. The biggest things that you're looking for on your artifact is area of effect damage as a secondary roll. You want area of effect damage as a secondary roll because that'll improve the splash damage and splash radius. If it is a primary roll, meaning if it is at the very top of the artifact, it's only going to give you that area of effect or splash damage. It won't give you splash radius. Just kind of a small little detail. Your elemental damage is very nice to have if you get gun damage. For example, I don't really need gun damage here because I already have 390 V2, but if I had pistol damage as a primary stat on an artifact, it rolls as V2 primary, or V2 gun damage if I got like pistol damage here. And then you're looking for splash damage on your flare. Those are the most important things you need. The actual like rolls on your flare don't really matter too much. And yeah, guys, that is it for the video. If you guys have any questions, if this confused the hell out of you and you're sitting here like, I don't understand a single thing you just said, be sure to pop over to the Twitch streams. I'm happy to break it down even further for you if you're still struggling. It's so much easier to field questions over on the Twitch channel than on YouTube, because there's a lot of you over here. But yeah, twitch.tv/Moxsy. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care. Peace.